Beneath the calm surface of the sea lie entire worlds we were never meant to see. This is a journey to 25 sunken cities, places history forgot and the ocean claimed. You will discover a hidden map of human civilization, one that rewrites the stories we thought we knew. We will explore a Roman resort frozen in time and a pirate haven swallowed in minutes. What force could make a thriving city simply vanish, and what secrets do its silent streets hold now? These underwater ruins are more than just stone and sediment. They are messages from our past. What do you believe is the most important lesson a lost city can teach us? That first glimpse of a human structure in the abyss is a moment that redefines reality. It is not just a ruin, it is a bridge. For as long as we have told stories, we have spoken of lands lost beneath the waves, from the fabled Atlantis to the sunken kingdoms of ancient lore. These tales were once dismissed as pure myth, the fanciful dreams of poets and philosophers. But what happens when the myth starts to become real? What happens when a sonar ping echoes back the shape of a wall, or a remotely operated vehicle's camera reveals a statue staring blankly into the deep? Suddenly, the legend is no longer just a story, it is a place. This profound shift is the engine of our fascination. We are not merely looking for broken pottery on the seafloor. We are seeking confirmation that the grand narratives of our past have a foundation in truth. The quest for these sunken cities sits at a perfect crossroads. It is where ancient maps, often thought to be decorated with monsters and imagination, meet the precise grid of modern sonar mapping. It is where a single line in a 2,000-year-old text, perhaps describing a great port swallowed by an earthquake, gives researchers the coordinates to begin a search. This blend of old clues and new technology transforms the endeavor from a treasure hunt into a form of time travel. We are using the most advanced tools of our era to answer the oldest questions of who we are and where we came from. Each discovery, therefore, is a triumph of human curiosity. It proves that our desire to understand our origins is powerful enough to light up the deepest, darkest places on our planet. Finding these lost cities is not just about cataloging artifacts. It is about recovering chapters of the human story that we never knew were missing. It is an act of resilience, a refusal to let history be erased by the sea. So as we prepare to dive into the specifics of these 25 forgotten places, hold on to that feeling. We are not just observers of history, we are the explorers finally answering the call from the deep. The line between legend and a legitimate discovery is drawn with stone and mortar. To call a place a sunken city, it must represent more than a collection of artifacts scattered on the seabed. We are looking for a true urban center, a place deliberately constructed on dry land where communities lived, worked, and built a society. Its submersion was not a slow decay but a defining event, a geological or climatic turning point that fundamentally altered its fate. This is what separates a forgotten metropolis from a shipwreck, however grand, or a coastal village gradually claimed by a rising tide. A sunken city possesses an organized footprint, the ghost of its original intent still visible in the layout of its streets, the foundations of its temples, and the remnants of its public squares. We search for evidence of daily life, from the design of a common well to the markings on a recovered tool, signs that this was a living, breathing world. And crucially, its story must connect to the broader narrative of human history, offering a tangible explanation for its loss, whether through a sudden earthquake, the relentless creep of sea level rise, or a catastrophic natural event. This definition is our guide. It moves us beyond myth, like the enduring tale of Atlantis for which no conclusive physical evidence exists, and grounds our exploration in verified, impactful discoveries. Each entry on our list will meet this threshold, representing a genuine piece of our collective past that was hidden and has now been found, waiting to rewrite a chapter we thought was complete. These are not just ruins, they are sealed time capsules of urban life, and their recovery changes how we understand the resilience and the vulnerability of civilizations across the ages. These silent cities did not simply choose to slip beneath the waves. They were brought low by the immense, often invisible, forces that shape our planet. To truly appreciate their stories, we must first meet the architects of their demise, the natural phenomena that can erase a metropolis from the map. The most dramatic agent is tectonic activity. Along fault lines, the Earth's crust is in constant, slow motion. When stress builds and finally releases in a major earthquake, the land itself can drop several feet in an instant, a process known as subsidence. A bustling port city built at sea level could find itself, in a matter of minutes, permanently below it, its streets flooding as the shoreline advances inland. This is a recurring story across the Mediterranean, where the meeting of continental plates creates a landscape of both beauty and profound instability. But not all endings are so swift. Another force works with glacial patience, the relentless creep of post-glacial sea level rise. When the last ice age ended, vast ice sheets melted, pouring enormous volumes of water back into the oceans. This global event raised sea levels hundreds of feet over thousands of years, a slow-motion inundation that drowned countless coastal settlements. For generations, residents might have watched the water creep closer, season by season, until one day the well was salty and the lowest neighborhoods were abandoned to the tide. This is a different kind of loss, not a single catastrophe but a gradual, inevitable retreat. Other culprits join this formidable list. A powerful tsunami, generated by an offshore quake, can deliver a catastrophic wall of water that scours a city clean, leaving its shattered foundations to be claimed by the sea. In some regions, the very ground can betray its inhabitants through soil liquefaction, where solid earth shaken by seismic waves suddenly behaves like a liquid, causing structures to tilt and sink. Even human activity plays a role, as the extraction of groundwater or minerals from beneath a city can cause the land to settle and sink over time. Recognizing these forces does more than explain a city's fate. It adds a layer of scientific awe to the historical mystery. Each sunken metropolis stands as a testament to the fragile, dynamic balance between human ambition and the planet's immense, shaping power. Our journey now takes us to the places where that balance was lost and where the ocean became the final guardian of their secrets. Off the coast of Japan's westernmost island, the sea holds a riddle carved in stone. In 1986, a local diver exploring the clear waters near Yonaguni came across something that defied simple explanation. What he found was not a scatter of pottery or a lone pillar, but an immense monolithic structure rising from the seabed. This is the Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling complex of what look like massive terraces, sharp 90-degree angles, and colossal steps leading to a central platform that some describe as a pyramid. The sheer scale is breathtaking, with the main structure stretching over 150 feet long and 80 feet wide, standing about 80 feet tall. It looks in every sense like the ruins of a forgotten citadel, and that is precisely where a fascinating and heated debate begins. Is this the work of human hands from a time before recorded history, or is it a stunning masterpiece of natural geology? Those who argue for a human origin point to features that seem too precise to be random. They note the straight, clean lines of what appear to be walls, the perfectly circular holes that could have held pillars, and the symmetrical, stair-like terraces that ascend the structure. Some researchers have identified formations resembling carved faces or animal figures, and surfaces that look as if they were cut with tools. If human-made, the implications are staggering. Geological surveys suggest the area could have been above water around 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. This would place its construction in a prehistoric era that rewrites the timeline of Japanese civilization, potentially pointing to a culture advanced enough for monumental architecture long before previously thought. The skeptics, however, offer a powerful counter-argument rooted in the natural world. They explain that the sandstone in this region is prone to fracturing along straight plains due to tectonic stresses. The powerful currents and erosive forces of the sea could then sculpt those fractures into the steps, platforms, and sharp angles we see today. What looks like a carved staircase could be a series of natural shelf breaks, and the so-called tool marks could be the result of marine life and relentless water action. This scientific perspective sees Yonaguni not as a ruin, but as a magnificent example of what nature can build when given enough time and the right conditions. This ongoing debate makes Yonaguni the perfect starting point for our exploration. It embodies the very essence of searching for sunken cities, where every observation is filtered through a lens of wonder and rigorous questioning. It teaches us that discovery is not just about finding something, but about interpreting it, about holding the possibility of a lost world in one hand and the principles of earth science in the other. The monument, whether a human monument or a natural one, challenges our assumptions and invites us to look deeper. While the mystery of Yonaguni lingers in the realm of debate, the sunken city of Pavlopetri offers a different kind of clarity, one written in stone and sand. Resting just beneath the surface off the coast of southern Greece, this is not a monument of ambiguous origin. Pavlopetri is a city complete and undeniable. Its foundations, streets, and courtyards lay out a blueprint of daily life from over 5,000 years ago, a time when the legends of heroes were just beginning to take shape. Discovered in 1968, its impact was immediate and profound. Here was the oldest known submerged city in the world, and it was not a haphazard collection of huts, but a carefully planned urban center from the Bronze Age. Walking its layout, even in the mind's eye, is to walk through a ghost town of the Mycenaean era. Archaeologists have mapped a recognizable grid of streets, some still following their original course. They have identified distinct neighborhoods, the outlines of homes, workshops, and public buildings arranged around courtyards. There was a central marketplace, a hub of commerce and community, and perhaps most impressively, evidence of sophisticated water management systems designed to serve the population. This level of organization shattered previous assumptions about early Greek society, revealing a complexity and foresight in urban planning that was simply not documented elsewhere. The city's preservation is a direct result of its fate. Pavlopetri likely succumbed to a 1-2 punch familiar to the Mediterranean, a series of earthquakes that caused the land to subside, followed by the relentless creep of post-glacial sea level rise. The sea did not violently destroy the city, it gently enveloped it. Sediment covered the ruins, protecting them from erosion and the disturbances that would have erased them on land. This created an almost perfect time capsule. Unlike sites on the surface, which are often built over and recycled through centuries, Pavlopetri's final day was, in an archaeological sense, frozen. Its tombs remain in place, offering respectful insights into ceremonial practices, and everyday artifacts from pottery to tools are found as they were last used. This snapshot is invaluable because it shows not the grand palaces of later myth, but the functional, vibrant town where ordinary people lived the lives that would eventually fuel those epic tales. Pavlopetri is a silent witness to the dawn of Western urban civilization, a blueprint of community preserved by the very waters that claimed it. While Pavlopetri shows us a city preserved, the story of Egypt's lost ports reveals a world utterly transformed. For over 1,200 years, the great gateway cities of Thonis-Heracleion and Canopus existed only in ancient texts, mentioned by historians like Herodotus as thriving centers where the Nile met the Mediterranean. They were considered legend until the year 2000, when an archaeologist named Frank Gaudio, working from a historical hunch, lowered a sonar device into the murky waters of Baiae. The readings that came back did not show a vague outline. They revealed a sprawling metropolis, an underwater Pompeii of the Nile Delta. The rediscovery was nothing short of spectacular. From the sediment emerged colossal statues of pharaohs, standing over 15 feet tall, their serene faces gazing upward through the water. Divers recovered delicate gold coins, intricately carved stelae bearing royal decrees, and the haunting remains of grand temples dedicated to the gods Ammon and Heracles, for whom the city was named. Here were the physical anchors for stories thought to be myth. These cities were not just Egyptian, they were the world's first true international ports. Thonis-Heracleion served as the mandatory customs checkpoint for all trade entering Egypt, a place where Greek merchants, Phoenician sailors, and Egyptian officials mingled in bustling harbors. Taxes were paid in precious metals, goods from across the known world were exchanged, and cultures blended in a vibrant, cosmopolitan hub. The scale of wealth and activity preserved on the seafloor speaks to an era of incredible prosperity and connection. So what could possibly erase such powerful and vital centers from the map? Their demise was not a single event, but a perfect and tragic storm of natural forces. The cities were built on the unstable silt of the Nile Delta, a foundation that was inherently fragile. Over centuries, the weight of their massive stone buildings, combined with a gradual rise in sea level, began to press down on this waterlogged ground. Researchers believe a final, devastating trigger likely came in the form of a major earthquake, which may have generated a local tsunami. This double blow caused a phenomenon known as liquefaction, where solid ground, shaken violently, suddenly behaves like a liquid. The very earth beneath Heracleion and Canopus turned to slurry, and the magnificent cities, with all their temples, statues, and homes, literally sank into the soft clay of their own delta, disappearing beneath the waves in what might have been a terrifyingly short span of time. Their rediscovery does more than fill a gap in the history books. It resurrects a pivotal crossroads of the ancient world, a place where continents met and history was written in stone and gold before the earth itself opened up and reclaimed its story. The transition from legend to tangible stone is a journey of profound significance, and nowhere is this more powerfully felt than off the coast of modern Gujarat. Here, the ancient Sanskrit texts speak of Dwarka, a magnificent city of gold and silver built by the divine ruler Krishna, a celestial capital that was said to have risen from the sea. The sacred narratives describe its tragic end, reporting that after Krishna's passing, the ocean rose and reclaimed the glorious metropolis, leaving only a memory in verse. For centuries, this was understood as pure mythology, a beautiful allegory of impermanence. Then, in the late 1980s, marine archaeologists began to survey the waters near the present-day town of Dwarka. Their sonar and dredging revealed something astonishing, not a city of gold, but a sunken landscape of stone. Scattered across the seabed were massive rectangular blocks, some weighing several tons, arranged in formations that suggested walls and foundations. They recovered ancient stone anchors, the kind used by large seafaring vessels, and layers upon layers of pottery shards, some dating back over 3,000 years. One of the most compelling structures appears to be a long, wide stone jetty or wharf, precisely the kind of construction a major maritime port would require. These are not the vague shapes of Yonaguni. These are unequivocal human artifacts, evidence of a sophisticated and powerful coastal civilization that thrived in antiquity. The discovery immediately ignited a fascinating dialogue between faith and science. For many, these submerged ruins are a direct validation of the ancient stories, physical proof that the Dwarka of the texts was a real place, a prosperous kingdom whose memory was preserved in sacred lore long after the waves took it. Archaeologists, while cautious, agree the findings are extraordinary. They point to the evidence of a major, well-planned port city that existed for centuries, a hub of trade and culture that would have been a regional power. Its sudden submergence aligns with known geological history, as this part of the Indian coast is seismically active, vulnerable to land subsidence and perhaps tsunamis triggered by ancient earthquakes. So, do these stones belong to the legendary city of Krishna? The answer depends on the lens through which you view history. Scientifically, they belong to a historically significant port city, whose name and precise cultural role may be lost to time. Culturally and spiritually, they provide a powerful anchor point for one of Hinduism's most cherished narratives, a bridge where material evidence meets millennia of belief. This is the true gift of Dwarka's discovery. It does not diminish the myth but deepens it, showing how the memory of a great and lost city, whether struck by divine will or geological force, can echo through generations, waiting in the silence of the sea for its story to be heard again. The choice to submerge a city is a profound act of sacrifice. In the late 1950s, the Chinese government made a decision that would transform a valley in Zhejiang province. To provide hydroelectric power and water for the growing region, a massive dam was constructed, and the valley behind it was slated to become a reservoir. This meant the deliberate flooding of two ancient counties, and within them the magnificent city of Shicheng, known as the Lion City for the nearby Wuxi Mountain or Five Lion Mountain. Founded over 1,300 years ago, Shicheng was a treasure of late imperial China, a place of graceful archways, winding stone streets, and intricate carvings that told stories of the Ming and Qing dynasties. In 1959, the floodgates closed and the waters of the newly formed Cairn Lake, or Thousand Island Lake, began to rise. Unlike the violent, chaotic ends met by cities struck by earthquakes, the Lion City was surrendered to a quiet, deliberate drown. The water did not smash its structures, it enveloped them, and in doing so, it created one of the most perfectly preserved time capsules in the world. Today, resting over 100 feet below the lake's serene surface, Shicheng exists in a state of suspended animation. The cold, dark, fresh water of the reservoir lacks the corrosive salt and the destructive marine life found in ocean environments. This unique condition has acted as a perfect preservative. Divers who explore its silent streets find a scene that feels both haunting and miraculous. The city's massive stone gates and archways stand intact, as if waiting for a procession that will never come. Along the main thoroughfares, the detailed carvings on walls and memorial arches remain sharply defined, depictions of lions, dragons, phoenixes, and historical scenes still visible after decades underwater. Even the wooden beams within some structures, which would have rotted away centuries ago on land, remain in place, held firm by the gentle, constant embrace of the lake. This accidental preservation presents a powerful and bittersweet paradox. Shicheng was lost to modern progress, its communities relocated, its history seemingly sacrificed for the needs of the present. Yet that very act of flooding sealed it away from the wear of weather, pollution, and urban development that has altered so many historical sites on land. In a way, the water saved the Lion City from the 20th century, freezing it in a moment just before it vanished. Its rediscovery by divers and underwater archaeologists has turned it into a stunning museum without walls, offering scholars an unparalleled glimpse into the architectural artistry and urban layout of a bygone era. Shicheng forces us to contemplate the complex trade-offs between preservation and progress. It stands as a monument not to a natural disaster, but to a human choice, and in its silent, watery halls, it asks us what we value, what we are willing to lose, and what legacies we might inadvertently create for the future to find. Sometimes the smallest communities leave the most profound echoes. Far off the coast of modern Israel, resting on the floor of the Mediterranean, lies a place called Atlit Yam. This is not a city of grand monuments or wide paved streets. It is a Neolithic village, a humble settlement of farmers and fishermen that was swallowed by the sea more than 8,000 years ago. Its discovery did something remarkable. It pulled back the curtain on a pivotal moment in human history, the very dawn of settled life. Here, we do not find the ruins of an empire, but the intimate footprint of a community learning how to build a world. The layout of Atlit Yam reveals a society in transition. Archaeologists have uncovered the foundations of simple rectangular houses, built from stone and mud, arranged around what appears to be a shared courtyard. They found flint tools for working the land, stone mortars for grinding grain, and the bones of domesticated animals, clear evidence that these people were not just hunters and gatherers, but early agriculturalists. Perhaps most astonishing are the stone-built water wells, sophisticated constructions that tapped into the freshwater aquifer beneath the village. This engineering shows a deep understanding of the environment and a commitment to staying in one place. But the seafloor holds more than just tools and homes. Among the most significant finds are the resting places of the villagers themselves. Studies of these remains have revealed the earliest known cases of human tuberculosis, offering a silent, sobering record of the health challenges faced by these early communities living in close quarters. This discovery is not presented as a grim detail, but as a crucial piece of the human story, helping scientists understand the long history of illness and how it shaped societies from their very beginnings. Then there is the mystery of the stones. Researchers uncovered a semicircular arrangement of massive rocks, with a central stone that had cup marks carved into its surface. This formation bears a striking resemblance to much later megalithic sites linked to ritual or astronomy. Was this a sacred space, a place for community gatherings under the stars, or an early calendar marking the seasons for planting and harvest? Its purpose remains an open question, a whisper of the spiritual and intellectual life of people we can only know through the objects they left behind. So why did they leave? The likely culprit was not a sudden catastrophe, but a slow, inexorable force. Atlit Yam thrived at the end of the last ice age. As the vast glaciers melted, global sea levels began their relentless rise. Generation after generation, the villagers would have watched the shoreline creep closer. Saltwater may have begun to infiltrate their precious wells, and storm surges would have posed an ever greater threat. The decision to abandon their homes, the wells they built, and the graves of their ancestors was likely one made with heavy hearts, a retreat in the face of a changing world they could not stop. Atlit Yam challenges our very definition of a lost city. It proves that you do not need pyramids or palaces to rewrite history. A small village with its wells, its homes, and its silent stone circle can illuminate the monumental human journey from wandering to putting down roots. It is a poignant reminder that our first great struggle was not for conquest, but for stability, and that even in retreat, these communities left a legacy written in stone on the seafloor, waiting 8 millennia for us to understand their world. The slow creep of the sea stands in stark contrast to a far more violent end. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the bustling port of Port Royal, Jamaica, was the most notorious city in the Western Hemisphere. Known across the Atlantic as the wickedest city on Earth, it was a chaotic, wealthy hub where pirates, privateers, and merchants operated with little regard for law, a place where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. By 1143 that same morning, 2/3 of it was gone, swallowed whole by the Caribbean. The earthquake that struck was of such immense power that the sandy ground upon which the city was built underwent liquefaction, turning instantly from solid earth into a churning, liquid slurry. Eyewitness accounts describe the horrifying spectacle, buildings sliding into the sea as the streets opened into fissures, with people and structures vanishing into the water and sand. The catastrophe was interpreted by many as a divine judgment on the city's infamous lifestyle, a sudden and terrifying reckoning delivered by the planet itself. For over 3 centuries, Port Royal lay preserved under a layer of water and sediment, a time capsule sealed by disaster. Modern archaeology has given us a window into that final, chaotic moment. Excavations on the sunken portion have revealed an astonishingly intact snapshot of 17th-century colonial life. Researchers have mapped sunken streets, found the walls of taverns and warehouses still standing, and recovered thousands of everyday objects exactly where they were dropped or stored. There are pewter plates set for a meal, barrels of trade goods, delicate glassware, and personal items like pipes and shoes, all frozen in time. This level of preservation is unparalleled for a city of this era, offering not just a glimpse of pirate legends, but a detailed, tangible record of the global maritime culture that fueled empires. The story of Port Royal is a dual lesson. It is a sobering reminder of the awesome, instantaneous power of geological forces that can rewrite human geography in minutes. But it is also a unique gift to history, a chance to study the complex social and economic world of a colonial port with a clarity that no land-based ruin could ever provide. The city's wickedness may be the legend, but its sudden silence is the profound truth we continue to learn from today. While Port Royal met a swift and violent judgment, the demise of another legendary city unfolded with an almost languid, sinister grace. In the shimmering Bay of Naples, the Roman resort of Baiae was not destroyed. It was seduced by the earth itself. This was the ultimate escape for the empire's elite, a place where emperors like Nero and Julius Caesar retreated to indulge in every imaginable luxury, far from the prying eyes and political pressures of Rome. Baiae was synonymous with excess, a sprawling complex of breathtaking villas, heated bathhouses fed by natural thermal springs, and manicured gardens that stretched down to the shore. Its reputation was a blend of breathtaking beauty and whispered scandal, a playground where the powerful came to relax and, as some historians note, sometimes to lose themselves entirely. The very ground they built upon, however, held a deep and patient secret. The entire region sits atop a vast volcanic caldera, and this geological unrest manifests not in sudden explosions, but in a phenomenon called bradysism. This is the imperceptibly slow breathing of the Earth's crust, a rising and falling over decades and centuries, driven by magma shifting deep below. In Baiae's case, the crust began a long, slow exhale. Sections of the coastline, weighted by the massive stone structures and nudged by subterranean forces, began to sink. It was not a catastrophic event, but a creeping inevitability. Over hundreds of years, the luxurious waterfront villas, the marble colonnades, and the intricate mosaic floors gradually surrendered to the advancing sea. This slow-motion sinking created an archaeological marvel. Today, divers glide through a surreal underwater museum. They float over the vivid, perfectly preserved tessellated floors of dining rooms where guests once reclined for feasts. They pass the ghostly walls of bath complexes where steam once rose from hot pools and encounter statues that now stand sentry for schools of fish instead of Roman patricians. The seawater, surprisingly, has acted as a remarkable preservative. The mosaics are shielded from sun, rain, and human wear, their colors often more vibrant than those exposed for centuries in ruins above ground. The stonework is protected from the freeze-thaw cycles that crack and erode masonry on land. In this silent, aqueous gallery, the decadence of Baiae is frozen in a state of elegant decay, offering a uniquely clear window into Roman architectural opulence and leisure. The story of Baiae is a different kind of cautionary tale, one not of sudden divine wrath, but of a luxurious civilization slowly, almost negligently, sinking into the very elements it sought to master. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest forces are not those that strike with fury, but those that simply and inexorably insist on taking back what is theirs. The mosaic of the gods still gleams beneath a few feet of water, a silent welcome to the lost city of Olous. On the northeastern coast of Crete, this ancient Dorian settlement did not meet a dramatic end but succumbed to a far more patient adversary. For centuries, Olous thrived as a vital trading center, its prosperity built on commerce and a remarkable feat of engineering, a network of over 100 wells that tapped into the island's freshwater sources. This abundance of water in a dry climate was the city's lifeblood, supporting its population and fueling its economic strength, which inevitably led to rivalries with neighboring city-states. The story of its disappearance, however, is written not in conflict but in the slow, inexorable rise of the Mediterranean Sea. As the waters crept higher over generations, the people of Olous faced a creeping crisis. They did not flee a sudden cataclysm, they conducted a gradual retreat. This allowed for a deliberate, if sorrowful, process of abandonment. Valuables could be moved, stones from important buildings could be salvaged for use elsewhere, and the community could relocate inland in an organized manner. This very process of careful leaving is what makes Olous appear more fragmented to archaeologists today, compared to a city frozen in a single moment. Its structures were systematically taken apart, its wells slowly filled with seawater and silt. Yet this fragmentation tells its own powerful story. It is the archaeological signature of adaptation, of a community reading the signs of environmental change and making the difficult choice to withdraw. The famous mosaic floor, likely from a public building or a wealthy villa, was left behind, perhaps too monumental to move, and now serves as a hauntingly beautiful marker of the city's former glory. Olous stands as a profound case study in the long-term vulnerability of coastal life. It illustrates a threat that feels eerily modern, the gradual loss of homeland to a rising sea. Its history reminds us that environmental change is not a new narrative, but an ancient one, and the responses of past societies, from innovation to eventual retreat, hold quiet lessons for our own relationship with the ever-shifting shoreline. The line between a cautionary tale and a historical record is often drawn by the tide. In the vast, muddy expanse of Germany's Wadden Sea, where the North Sea retreats twice a day to reveal a temporary landscape, lies the ghost of Rungholt. For centuries, this place was known as the Atlantis of the North Sea, a prosperous medieval trading town said to have been drowned in a single night as divine punishment for the pride and sin of its people. Sailors and storytellers passed down tales of church bells still ringing beneath the waves on stormy nights, a haunting melody from a city swallowed by its own hubris. It was the perfect moral fable, a stark reminder from the pulpit about the perils of a life lived without humility. Yet, as the waters recede in our modern age, they reveal something far more compelling than myth. They expose the very foundations of that lost city. What was once a spiritual lesson is now an archaeological site, where the outlines of houses, the remnants of wells, and the sophisticated systems of tidal gates and dikes become visible in the low-tide mudflats. These are not the stuff of legend. They are the engineering signatures of a real, sophisticated Frisian community that mastered a difficult environment. The town's wealth came from trade, built on land painstakingly reclaimed from the sea through a network of drainage ditches and protective mounds. Discoveries like the clear location of a church, identified by a scatter of bricks and the outline of its foundation, ground the story in physical reality. This systematic reclamation pattern, visible from aerial surveys, confirms a settled, organized society, not a fictional one. The great storm that erased it was also very real, a catastrophic event known as the Groot Mandrink, or Great Drowning of Men, which struck the coast in 1362. This monstrous storm tide overwhelmed the very defenses the people had built, flooding the reclaimed land and devastating countless communities along the coast. The memory of that night, the sudden and total loss, was so traumatic that it became woven into the cultural fabric, transforming from a weather event into a story with a moral. The folklore was not a lie, it was a vessel, a way for generations to carry the memory of a real tragedy and to make sense of an unimaginable loss. Rungholt teaches us that oral history is not merely fantasy, it is often a deeply encoded record. The details of sin and punishment provided a framework to explain the unexplainable while preserving the essential truth that a great city was here and then it was gone. Every low tide now is an invitation, a chance to walk across the same mudflats where a bustling town once stood, and to understand how the deepest human stories are often anchored in the hardest stones of reality. The line between rewriting history and wishful thinking can be surprisingly murky. In the early 2000s, a startling announcement emerged from the Gulf of Khambhat off India's western coast. A team conducting a geological survey reported that their sonar had mapped what appeared to be massive, geometric structures on the seafloor, over 100 feet below the surface. The shapes, they claimed, resembled the foundations of a vast, sprawling city. Even more astonishing were the artifacts reportedly dredged from the site, including pieces of wood and stone tools that, when subjected to preliminary dating methods, suggested an age of around 9,000 years. The implications were seismic. If verified, this would not merely be another sunken city. It would be a discovery that predated the great civilizations of the Indus Valley by several millennia, pushing the dawn of complex urban society in the Indian subcontinent back into a shadowy prehistoric era. The prospect was electrifying, suggesting a lost, advanced society that thrived when much of the world was still in the Stone Age. This was the birth of the Gulf of Khambhat's controversial legend. Yet, from the very beginning, mainstream archaeology met these claims with profound and rigorous skepticism. The challenges are immense and speak to the difficult realities of underwater research. The site lies in waters with notoriously powerful currents, which constantly churn the seabed. This creates a phenomenon where ancient artifacts from many different time periods can be swept together and deposited in a single location, making any object recovered from the seafloor extremely difficult to link definitively to the sonar structures below. The dating of the wood samples, for instance, was immediately questioned, as the method used could date the age of the tree itself, not necessarily when it was shaped by human hands. That piece of wood could have been a natural log that sank thousands of years before any hypothetical city was built. Furthermore, skeptics argue that the sonar images, while intriguing, are not conclusive. The geometric patterns could be the result of natural geological formations, like ancient river channels or bedrock fractures, which can often appear remarkably regular. Without the clear, in situ context that archaeologists rely on, where an artifact is found in relation to a wall or a floor, the evidence remains tantalizing but unproven. This case is a masterclass in scientific caution. It highlights the essential, sometimes painstakingly slow, standards required to validate a world-changing discovery. The excitement of a 9,000-year-old city is a powerful narrative, but science demands a chain of evidence that can withstand every challenge. The Gulf of Khambhat serves as a crucial reminder that in the search for lost worlds, our greatest responsibility is not just to find, but to verify, ensuring that the stories we tell are built on the solid rock of fact, not the shifting sands of the deep. The North Sea does not always take with a storm. Sometimes it claims its prize with a patient, grinding persistence. This is the story of Dunwich, a medieval powerhouse that did not vanish in a day, but was slowly, piece by piece, erased from the map of England. In its prime during the 13th century, Dun, which was a formidable rival to London itself, a bustling port of trade, a center of religious life with over a dozen churches, and a parliamentary borough that sent representatives to govern the realm. Its wealth was built upon the wool trade and herring fishing, a prosperity that seemed as solid as the stone of its great churches. Yet the very coastline that gave it life was already plotting its demise. The cliffs upon which Dunwich stood were composed of soft, unstable glacial material, vulnerable to the endless assault of waves and currents. Major storms in the 13th and 14th centuries began the town's long retreat, sweeping away entire neighborhoods, harbor facilities, and the first of its many churches. Historical records, including tax rolls, tell a poignant tale of dwindling wealth and population as the sea marched inland, meter by meter, century by century. The final church tower, that of All Saints, was last seen crumbling into the waves in the early 20th century, a melancholy postscript to a 600-year-long farewell. Today, the modern village of Dunwich is a quiet, small fraction of its former self, while its medieval heart lies beneath the grey, churning waters just offshore. Divers exploring this submerged landscape encounter a ghostly world. They find the scattered foundations of priories and churches, the outlines of lost streets now home to marine life, and the occasional artifact that speaks to daily life, interrupted not by sudden disaster, but by an inevitable, creeping loss. Modern sonar mapping has been crucial, creating a detailed chart of this sunken town, allowing archaeologists to virtually reconstruct the layout of streets and buildings that historical documents can only describe. This slow-motion tragedy makes Dunwich a uniquely powerful case study. It is not a monument to a single, catastrophic event, but a testament to a force that works on a scale almost beyond human perception. Its story is a stark, centuries-long warning about the vulnerability of coastal settlements to environmental change. For modern communities facing rising sea levels and increased storm intensity, Dunwich is a sobering historical echo, a reminder that the border between land and sea is never truly fixed, and that the ocean's greatest power may not be in its fury, but in its unwavering, patient resolve. The Black Sea guards its secrets with a unique and perfect stillness. On the Taman Peninsula, the waves lap over what was once Phanagoria, the largest ancient sunken city in all of Russia. Founded by Greek colonists in the 6th century before the Common Era, this was no minor outpost. It grew to become a thriving capital of the powerful Bosporan kingdom, a vital hub where Greek culture blended with the nomadic Scythians and other peoples of the steppe. For centuries, its harbors buzzed with ships carrying grain, fish, and luxury goods across the ancient world. Today, a significant portion of this metropolis, including its vital port facilities and entire urban neighborhoods, rests silently beneath the water's surface. This submersion, however, is not a story of destruction, but of remarkable preservation, thanks to a quirk of the Black Sea itself. Below a certain depth, the water becomes anoxic, completely devoid of oxygen. In this strange, silent environment, the organisms that typically feast on wood, rope, and other organic materials simply cannot survive. This creates a time capsule effect unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Imagine a ship's wooden hull or the delicate weave of a fishing net lying on the seafloor for over 2,000 years, not as a pile of rot, but as a recognizable structure, its form eerily intact. This anoxic layer acts as a perfect preservative, holding history in a state of suspended animation. Recent underwater excavations have revealed the stunning potential of this environment. Archaeologists have uncovered a magnificent marble tomb from the city's necropolis, its craftsmanship speaking to the wealth and status of those who lived here. Even more tantalizing are the foundations of what appears to be a grand palace complex, hinting at the political power that was centered in this coastal capital. Each discovery is pulled from the murky depths with a clarity that would be impossible in oxygen-rich waters. Phanagoria demonstrates a profound truth. Sometimes the forces that claim a city are the very same forces that save it. The same sea that slowly claimed its shoreline also provided the unique conditions to freeze a moment of its splendor, offering us a window into a cosmopolitan crossroads where empires met and history was written, not just in stone, but in perfectly preserved wood and bone. The battle against the sea can be a slow and deliberate negotiation, a conversation between human will and the shifting earth. On the rugged coast of ancient Lycia, now modern Turkey, the city of Aperlae engaged in this conversation for generations, and its ruins tell the entire story in stone and water. This was not a city struck by a sudden cataclysm, but one that sank by design, or more precisely, by the relentless design of the landscape itself. Aperlae was constructed on a coastline experiencing tectonic subsidence, a gradual sinking of the land. From its founding, the residents were not just building a city, they were building a defense. Their first structures went up on dry land, but as the decades passed, the sea began to whisper at their doorsteps. The remarkable archaeological record shows their response, not with panic, but with persistent adaptation. They built sturdy seawalls, pushing back the encroaching water to protect their homes and their vital industry, the production of precious Tyrian purple dye from local sea snails. As the land sank another few centimeters, they built another wall, a little further inland. This cycle repeated for centuries, creating a visible timeline of resilience etched directly into the site. Today, walking the ruins of Aperlae is like reading a geological history book. You can stand on a section of an ancient street that is firmly on land, then look a few meters away to see the same street disappear beneath the clear turquoise water. Buildings are fractured in two, with one half standing in the sun and the other half submerged, home now to fish and swaying seagrass. A stone archway might frame a view of the open sea on one side, while its matching counterpart is visible beneath the surface, creating a ghostly, mirrored effect. This live sinking process provides a uniquely clear case study. We are not looking at a city that met one fate on one day. We are witnessing the slow-motion record of its entire struggle. Each seawall marks a generation's effort, a declaration that they would not yield. Yet, the tectonic forces were patient and unstoppable. Eventually, maintaining the endless cycle of construction became unsustainable, and the city was gradually abandoned, not in a rush but in a long, drawn-out retreat. Aperlae's story is a profound lesson in human perseverance facing an inevitable natural force. It showcases a society that understood its challenge and fought creatively against it for as long as possible, adapting its very architecture to a changing world. Their eventual surrender was not a failure, but the closing chapter of a centuries-long dialogue with the sea, a dialogue whose every word is still visible, half in the light and half in the deep. The deep holds its secrets in salt water and in fresh. In the calm, dark waters of Rock Lake, Wisconsin, something unexpected rises from the muddy bottom. Sonar surveys have mapped a series of startling shapes, large, angular mounds that some describe as pyramids resting beneath the lake's surface. These formations immediately ignited a modern legend, a story of a lost, perhaps ancient civilization that once thrived here in the heart of North America, long before European contact. Local lore and popular accounts sometimes speak of a forgotten people with advanced knowledge, their monumental architecture now hidden by the lake. It is a captivating idea, one that taps directly into our desire to find undiscovered chapters of history close to home. The evidence, however, invites a more measured and fascinating debate. Geologists point to a powerful and plausible natural explanation. This region was sculpted by glaciers, massive sheets of ice that advanced and retreated over millennia. These glaciers could have deposited large, dense mounds of debris, known as drumlins or moraines, which over time, with erosion and the lake's formation, might assume surprisingly geometric profiles. The shapes we see could be the work of ice and time, not of human hands. Another, more recent human explanation also exists. Some archaeologists suggest these could be the remains of large, sophisticated fish traps or weirs built by indigenous peoples centuries ago. Constructed from stone and wood to channel and catch fish, such structures, when submerged by rising water levels, could collapse into mound-like forms that sonar might interpret as more deliberate architecture. This possibility still speaks to human ingenuity, but frames it within a known and respected context of local history and sustainable practice. The enduring allure of Rock Lake is not necessarily about proving the existence of a phantom civilization. Its power lies in how such a mystery captures the public imagination, challenging us to question the established narrative. It reminds us that history is not only found in the traditional cradles of civilization across the ocean, but potentially in our own backyards, waiting to be understood. These sunken shapes, whether glacial leftovers or the fingerprints of ancient fishermen, force a conversation. They make us look harder at the landscape, to listen more closely to both scientific data and oral tradition, and to sit comfortably with the fact that some mysteries persist not to frustrate us, but to keep our sense of wonder afloat. The lake does not give up its answer easily, and in that silence we are free to ponder all the possibilities. Legends are not always born from imagination, sometimes they are born from loss. On the sun-drenched coast of Tamil Nadu, the ancient stone temples of Mahabalipuram have stood for over 13 centuries, their intricate carvings telling stories of gods and kings. But local folklore tells a different, deeper story, one of a grander vision now missing. For generations, people spoke of 7 magnificent pagodas that once graced this shore, a glorious architectural symphony where only one now remains. The story went that 6 of these temples were claimed long ago by the envy of the sea, leaving the single shore temple as a lonely sentinel. This tale was often shared as a beautiful myth, a poetic explanation for the temple's solitary grandeur. Then, in December of 2004, the Indian Ocean itself decided to reveal a secret. In the moments before the devastating tsunami struck, the waters along the coast performed a bizarre and terrifying act. They dramatically receded, pulling back hundreds of feet. For a brief, haunting window, the exposed seabed near Mahabalipuram unveiled what had been hidden. Local fishermen and residents stared in awe at the sight of large stone structures, including a massive lion statue and the clear outlines of man-made walls lying where only water had been moments before. The ocean's retreat was a prelude to tragedy, but in that fleeting moment it offered a staggering validation. The scientific surveys that followed confirmed the presence of these submerged ruins, aligning almost perfectly with the legend of the lost pagodas. This event creates a profound connection across time. It suggests the ancient story was not mere fiction, but a collective memory, a cultural heirloom passed down through countless generations who remembered a time when more temples stood proudly on the land. A real geological event, perhaps an ancient tsunami or a series of great storms, likely did claim those structures, and the trauma of that loss was woven into the community's identity as a legend. The 2004 tsunami, in a cruel and ironic twist, used its own destructive power to briefly illuminate that very past. This underscores a powerful idea resonating through all these sunken cities, that our oldest stories are often anchored in truth. Oral histories and folklore can be fragile vessels, but they are remarkably durable, carrying the echo of real events long after the waves have closed over the evidence. Mahabalipuram teaches us to listen more closely to the old tales, for they may not be explanations for the unknown, but memories of the lost waiting for the sea to relent, if only for a moment, and show us the stones that prove it. Progress can sometimes demand a quiet, profound sacrifice. In the late 1950s, a massive engineering project reshaped the border between Canada and the United States, the creation of the St. Lawrence Seaway. This new shipping channel promised economic vitality and modern connectivity, but its construction required a vast reservoir. In 1958, the rising waters of the newly formed Lake St. Lawrence began to claim a different kind of prize, not ancient temples, but the living communities of Ontario's lost villages. Towns like Altesville, Moulinet, and several others, with their schools, churches, and family homes, were deliberately and permanently flooded. This was not an act of nature, but a conscious human decision made in the name of the future. The emotional weight of this modern inundation is deeply felt. Over 650 families were relocated, their roots physically severed as the landscape of their memories was transformed into a map of water. The villages were not destroyed by a sudden disaster. They were evacuated, dismantled, and then surrendered. This process allowed for a careful, sorrowful exodus, where headstones from cemeteries were moved to new ground and buildings that could be salvaged were transported to higher land, creating a poignant patchwork of the old world within the new. Yet, the lake did not erase everything. During periods of low water, the ghostly outlines of this recent past re-emerge. The paved roadways of Altesville's main street become visible, leading literally into the lake. The concrete foundations of shops and homes break the surface, sketching the floor plans of lives interrupted. A submerged railway bridge, its steel girders now a habitat for fish, stands as a stark monument to a connection that was permanently cut. These remnants are powerful precisely because they are so ordinary. They are the architecture of everyday 20th century life, now resting in an aquatic museum. The story of the lost villages provides a crucial, sobering parallel to the ancient sunken cities we have explored. It reminds us that the phenomenon of communities lost to water is not confined to the distant past. It is an ongoing chapter in the human story. The forces have changed from tectonic shifts to economic imperatives, but the core experience of displacement and the haunting persistence of memory remains strikingly similar. This modern example asks us difficult questions about the price of progress and how we value heritage. What do we choose to preserve, and what must we consent to lose? The silent streets beneath Lake St. Lawrence hold no answers, only the quiet, reflective space for us to consider the true cost of the world we build, and the worlds we choose with clear eyes to leave behind. The concept of a lost city expands into an entire lost world along the murky waters of the Scheldt estuary. Here lies the verdronken land van Saeftinghe, the drowned land of Saeftinghe, a place where history did not just sink, it dissolved into myth and mud. This was not a single urban center, but a sprawling, prosperous region of fertile polder villages, rich farmland, and bustling communities, all protected by a network of dikes that represented the pinnacle of medieval hydraulic engineering. Its people lived with the constant presence of the sea, believing their walls were strong enough to hold back any threat. Then, in 1584, during the turmoil of the 80 Years' War, a catastrophic storm surge overwhelmed the defenses. The event was so devastating that an entire geography was rewritten, swallowing towns like Namen and St. Laurens and transforming a lived-in landscape into a vast, watery wilderness. The scale of this loss was so profound that it could not be processed by fact alone. It demanded a story, and so folklore provided one, a haunting tale of a mermaid's curse. According to the legend, fishermen from the area captured a mermaid and refused to release her back to the sea. In her dying breath, she uttered a prophecy that the land which had taken her would itself be taken by the water. When the Great Flood came, it was seen as the fulfillment of that curse, a poetic and moral explanation for an otherwise senseless tragedy. This narrative, passed down through generations, served a crucial purpose. It encoded the collective trauma of the event into a memorable, cautionary myth about respecting the natural world, giving a human-shaped reason for a force of nature that felt like divine punishment. Today, Saeftinghe is Europe's largest brackish tidal marsh, a desolate and beautiful expanse where the sea claims the land twice daily. It is a landscape in perpetual motion, where silt and water erase and reveal its past with each tide. On the exposed mudflats, the determined visitor might find the ghostly outlines of a church foundation, the scattered bricks of a long-vanished homestead, or the skeletal remains of a drowned dike, now just a hump in the wetland. These are not grand monuments, they are subtle, emerging scars on the land itself. The story of Saeftinghe fundamentally shaped the Dutch national identity, hardening a collective resolve in the endless battle against the water. The failure of those dikes led directly to innovations in water management, spurring the technological and social cooperation that would later define the country's famous polder model. This lost land is a foundational memory, a submerged lesson in vulnerability that spurred a nation to become masters of hydraulic engineering. It teaches us that sometimes a civilization's greatest strengths are forged in response to its most profound losses, and that the line between land and sea is a story constantly being rewritten, not just by waves, but by the will of those who refuse to be forgotten. High altitude does not guarantee safety from the deep. At over 12,000 feet above sea level, the vast, shimmering expanse of Lake Titicaca seems an unlikely place to search for a sunken city. This is not a coastal sea, but the highest navigable lake in the world, cradled in the Andes between Bolivia and Peru. Its thin air and intense sunlight feel a world away from the saltwater mysteries of the ocean, yet here, the local Quechua and Aymara peoples have long passed down stories of Wanaku, a great city that vanished beneath the waves. For generations, these tales were considered beautiful folklore, a symbolic narrative about the cycles of creation and loss. Then, divers and archaeologists began to look beneath the surface. What they found transformed legend into archaeological fact. Scattered across the lakebed, particularly near the Island of the Sun, are the unmistakable signs of a lost civilization. They discovered extensive stone terraces, built with precision, that now descend into the abyss. They mapped long, straight walls that once defined streets or plazas, and recovered ancient pottery and ceremonial artifacts from the silt. Most compelling of all is a large, submerged stone structure that many researchers believe was a temple, its form still commanding reverence over 1,000 years after it sank. These ruins are not Incan, but belong to the Wanaku culture, a powerful pre-Incan civilization that dominated the region from around 500 to 1,000 years after the Common Era. The Wanaku were master engineers and agriculturalists, known for their monumental architecture on land, like the famous Gate of the Sun. Finding their work underwater adds a profound new chapter to their story. So how does an entire city sink in a mountain lake? The answer lies in the restless earth beneath this high plateau. The Andes are a young, dramatically growing mountain range created by the collision of tectonic plates. This makes the region intensely seismically active. A major earthquake could have caused a section of the lakeshore to slump or subside, dropping built structures instantly into deeper water. Additionally, Lake Titicaca is not a static bathtub. Its water level has fluctuated dramatically over centuries due to climatic shifts. Periods of intense rainfall could have raised the lake dozens of feet, slowly and permanently flooding low-lying settlements built during a drier era. The combination of these forces, a sudden tectonic drop followed by a long-term rise in water, could have sealed Wanaku's fate. This discovery is crucial because it shatters a preconception. It proves that sunken cities are not exclusive to oceans and seas. They can occur in any body of water, anywhere on the planet, where human ambition meets geological instability. The story of Wanaku elevates our understanding, reminding us that the dialogue between civilization and the elements is a universal drama, played out as powerfully on a high mountain lake as it is on any stormy coast. A sacred hilltop can become an island in the mist. In the rolling landscape of County Meath, Ireland, the Loughcrew estate is famed for its passage tombs, ancient stone chambers crowned atop hills where Neolithic communities honored their ancestors and marked the turning of the seasons thousands of years ago. But one of these cairns tells a different story, not of a hilltop but of the deep. Known as the Submerged Cairn, this megalithic structure lies not under the open sea, but at the bottom of a lake, its stones resting in silent, peat-stained water. This is not a city in any conventional sense, but its discovery fundamentally expands what we mean by a sunken world. It asks us to consider that what was lost to the waters were not only homes and harbors, but also temples and places of profound ceremony. The positioning is the key to the mystery. Researchers believe this cairn was originally constructed on dry land, part of the same sacred complex as its sister tombs on the nearby hills. Its current location beneath the lake surface points to a dramatic yet gradual transformation of the entire environment. After the last ice age, as climates warmed and rainfall patterns shifted, water tables in Ireland rose significantly. What was once a dry valley or a damp hollow could have slowly filled over generations, becoming a permanent lake. The very land itself was softening, swallowing the markers left upon it. This slow drowning of a ritual site offers a quiet, powerful insight into the lives of those early communities. They built these monuments to last for eternity, aligning them with solar events and burying their honored dead within. The rising waters were an opponent they could not see and could not fight, a force that worked on a scale longer than a human lifetime. One day, the entrance to the tomb may have been damp. A few generations later, the lowest stones were submerged. Centuries after that, the entire structure vanished beneath the still surface, its memory perhaps preserved only in local lore as a place where the spirits of the old ones dwelt under the water. This phenomenon connects Loughcrew to a broader pattern across northern Europe, where countless archaeological treasures, from wooden trackways to ceremonial offerings, have been found preserved in bogs and lake beds. These wetlands, often seen as empty or wild, are in fact immense archives holding the material memory of a time when the landscape itself was in flux. The submerged cairn reminds us that climate change is not a modern narrative, but an ancient force that reshaped human geography. It challenges us to look beyond the obvious to understand that a sunken history can be a single, sacred stone as much as a sprawling metropolis, and that sometimes the most profound losses are those of meaning, of a connection to a place that the world itself decided to reclaim. The ultimate sunken landscape is not a city of stone, but a continent of forests and rivers. Before the North Sea existed as we know it, a vast, fertile plain known as Doggerland stretched from the east coast of Britain all the way to the modern Netherlands and Denmark. This was not an empty wilderness, but a rich, inhabited world, a verdant bridge between continents that teemed with life and human activity for thousands of years. Then the sea took it all back, around 6,500 to 6,200 years before the Common Era. The final remnants of this lost land were swallowed by the relentless rise of post-glacial sea levels, a slow-motion inundation that transformed a continent into a seabed. This event did not just change a map, it shattered a world and scattered its people, an ancient trauma whose echo might be found in the oldest stories we tell. For generations, North Sea fishermen have known something strange rested below their nets. Trawlers would occasionally haul up not just fish, but the bones of mammoths, the tusks of woolly rhinoceros, and curiously shaped stones that were clearly ancient tools, arrowheads, hand axes, and scraping blades. These were not random artifacts washing from a shore. They were evidence of a terrestrial world now dozens of feet underwater. Modern seismic mapping has painted a breathtaking picture of this drowned realm. The sonar reveals a ghost geography, rolling hills, deep river valleys like the ancient Rhine-Thames system, sunken lakes, and even what appear to be the potential outlines of campsites along those vanished waterways. While we will not find paved streets or temples here, we find something equally profound: the lost homeland of the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who followed herds across this plain, who fished its rivers and gathered in seasonal camps. The drowning of Doggerland was not a single catastrophe, but a creeping, unstoppable advance. Over centuries, communities would have watched their hunting grounds shrink, their freshwater sources turn brackish, and their familiar migratory paths cut off by expanding lagoons and marshes. They were faced with a permanent, generations-long retreat, forced to gather what they could and move to higher ground, to the hills that would become the coasts of Britain and mainland Europe. This mass displacement of peoples, this profound loss of an entire world, likely left a deep scar on the collective memory of those who survived. Many researchers suggest that the slow, relentless flood of Doggerland could be the primordial seed for the great flood myths that appear in countless cultures, but particularly those around the North Sea basin. The story of a lost land consumed by water is not merely a metaphor. It could be a very old, very real memory passed down for hundreds of generations, eventually crystallizing into legend. Doggerland challenges us to expand our definition of what was lost. It was more than a city. It was a complete ecosystem, a chapter of human prehistory, and a foundational experience that may have shaped the very myths we use to understand our place in a changing world. Its silence beneath the waves is a reminder that sometimes the most significant ruins are not made of stone but of memory, written in the sediment of a forgotten continent. A city of stone floating on a lagoon defies every expectation. On the remote island of Pohnpei, the ruins of Nan Madol rise from the shallow water, a labyrinth of colossal basalt logs stacked like firewood to form walls, tombs, and platforms across nearly 100 artificial islets. This is not a city that was built on land and later claimed by the sea. It was engineered from the start to exist within it, a Venice of the Pacific constructed over a millennium ago. The scale is staggering, with some of the prismatic stones weighing up to 50 tons each, hauled from quarries across the island and somehow transported across the water to this sacred site. Canals, silent and green, weave between the islets, serving as the streets of this aquatic metropolis, where the only traffic would have been canoes gliding to ceremonies at the central mortuary compound. The very existence of Nan Madol poses a magnificent puzzle. How did its builders, with no metal tools or pulleys, achieve such a feat? Local legend provides a mystical answer, speaking of twin sorcerer brothers who used magical powers to levitate the stones into place. While science points to ingenious log rolling, raft systems, and immense communal effort, the legend underscores the awe this place inspired, even in its own time. It was a place of profound power, the ceremonial and political seat of the Saudeleur dynasty, a city designed to be separate, to be approached only by water, elevating its rulers literally and figuratively above the common world. Yet this deliberate embrace of water has become its modern peril. Nan Madol was built in a state of delicate equilibrium with the lagoon, a balance now being overturned. The canals, once meticulously maintained, are slowly silting up, choked by the relentless advance of mangrove roots that pry apart the ancient masonry. More ominously, the global rise in sea level, a force its builders could not have foreseen, now laps higher against the foundations with each passing decade. Saltwater intrusion and increasingly powerful storm surges threaten to destabilize the very platforms that have stood for centuries. Nan Madol is thus a city in a perpetual, slow-motion act of sinking, not from a sudden cataclysm but from the cumulative pressure of a changing world. It serves as a vital bridge in our understanding, a living link between the fully submerged cities of the past and those of our present and future. It shows us a civilization that mastered an aquatic environment, only to have that same environment, amplified by new global forces, begin to reclaim its creation. This stone city on the water asks us a pressing question. How do we protect the legacies of the past when the very element they were built upon becomes the agent of their loss? The slow, relentless rhythm of a rising tide is a force that reshapes continents. While earthquakes and storms provide sudden, dramatic endings for many sunken cities, there exists a quieter, more pervasive architect behind countless disappearances, a global phenomenon that altered the very map of the world. This force is climate change, not as a modern political topic, but as a historical and geological reality that unfolded over millennia following the end of the last ice age. As the vast continental glaciers began their great melt, they released staggering volumes of water back into the world's oceans. This was not a gentle increase, but what scientists term a meltwater pulse, a surge that raised global sea levels by hundreds of feet over a span of several thousand years. Imagine a world where the coastlines you see on a map today did not exist. Where now there is open ocean, there were once vast, fertile plains, river valleys, and sheltered bays that provided ideal homes for early human societies. The Persian Gulf, for instance, was once a lush, habitable basin watered by the Tigris and Euphrates, a potential cradle for settlements long before recorded history began in Mesopotamia. Similarly, the Sunderland Shelf connected the islands of modern Indonesia into a single, sprawling peninsula. These were not marginal lands, but core territories where people thrived, hunted, fished, and built their communities. The rising waters did not come as a single wave, but as an inexorable creep. Generation after generation, communities living on these low-lying coastal shelves would have witnessed the slow transformation of their world. The saltwater would intrude further up the rivers each year, poisoning freshwater sources. Familiar hunting grounds and gathering forests would gradually be swallowed, turning into wetlands and then open sea. Storm surges would reach further inland with each passing season. For these ancient peoples, climate change was not a debated concept. It was a daily, observable fact pressing against their doorstep. Their responses created the human drama within this geological event. Some communities, possessing the resources and mobility, would have undertaken great migrations, moving inland or along the coast to higher ground, carrying their stories and skills with them. These journeys likely seeded new cultures and fueled population movements across continents. Other groups, perhaps more isolated or deeply tied to their ancestral lands, may have tried to adapt in place, building simple defenses or altering their subsistence patterns until the water finally made life unsustainable. The legacy of this global inundation is written on the seafloor in a language of lost landscapes. Every submerged forest peat bed, every drowned river channel mapped by sonar, and every coastal settlement we have explored, from the Neolithic village of Atlit to the drowned plains of Doggerland, is a testament to this profound planetary shift. These sunken cities are not just isolated curiosities, they are individual data points in a global pattern, chapters in the story of humanity's long relationship with a dynamic and changing climate. Recognizing this deep history reframes our exploration. It moves the narrative from a series of unfortunate accidents to a recurring theme in the human journey. The ancient struggle to adapt to rising seas mirrors our own contemporary challenges, not as a direct parallel, but as a sobering reminder of the scale at which environmental forces can operate and the profound choices they impose upon civilizations. Studying these lost worlds, therefore, becomes more than an archaeological pursuit. It is an act of listening to the past, hearing the echoes of adaptation and resilience, and understanding that the dialogue between human society and the planet's climate is one of our oldest and most enduring stories. The search for a lost city begins not with a dive, but with a map of the impossible. To find a metropolis hidden for centuries, we must first learn to see through the water itself, to turn the opaque, shadowy depths into a landscape we can read. This is where the high-tech treasure hunt truly begins, a fusion of historical detective work and cutting-edge engineering. The first clues often come from the past, a line in an ancient text describing a port's location, a local legend passed down for generations, or a fisherman's tale of snagging his net on something strange. These whispers from history provide the search area, but it is modern technology that illuminates what lies below. The most fundamental tool is sonar, sound waves sent pulsing toward the seafloor. Side-scan sonar is the workhorse towed behind a research vessel, painting a detailed, almost photographic image of the seabed's texture. It reveals the stark contrast between smooth sand and the jagged, angular outlines of human-made structures, showing a wall where there should be a slope or a straight line where nature prefers a curve. For an even more precise picture, scientists use multi-beam bathymetry. Imagine this not as a single beam of sound, but a wide fan that sweeps the bottom, measuring the time it takes for thousands of echoes to return. This builds a breathtakingly accurate three-dimensional model of the underwater terrain, revealing the subtle mound of a buried foundation or the sunken channel of an ancient river with topographic clarity. But stone is not the only signature of a lost city. That is where the magnetometer comes in. This sensitive instrument detects tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field. Fired ceramics, hearths, and metal objects from a settlement create localized magnetic anomalies, invisible stains of human activity on the seafloor's magnetic map. A cluster of these anomalies in a grid-like pattern is a powerful clue that something more than rocks lies beneath the sediment. Once a promising target is identified, the eyes of the mission descend. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, are robotic explorers connected to a ship by a long cable, delivering power and transmitting live video. Piloted from the surface, they can hover motionless above a delicate artifact, use manipulator arms to gently recover an object, or blow away centuries of silt with a precise jet of water to reveal an intricate mosaic. For broader, systematic surveys, autonomous underwater vehicles, or a UVS, are set loose. These are the underwater drones, pre-programmed to glide on silent battery power over vast, grid-like swaths of ocean, collecting sonar and photographic data without a tether, mapping areas the size of cities with methodical efficiency. Even space plays a role. Satellite imagery using specialized sensors can sometimes detect subtle differences in watercolor or surface texture that hint at large structures resting in shallow, clear seas. This entire process is a symphony of disciplines where geologists interpret the seabed, historians provide context, and engineers design the tools to bridge the gap. It celebrates a profound truth. Our curiosity has built the very instruments that can finally answer its oldest questions. This behind-the-scenes ingenuity means that the map of our past is still being drawn, and with every technological leap, we gain new eyes to see the forgotten worlds waiting in the deep. The moment a lost city is found, a new race begins. It is a race not just to understand, but to protect, because the very water that preserved these sites for centuries can become their greatest threat in the modern world. The discovery of a sunken metropolis is a scientific triumph, yet it also exposes a fragile time capsule to dangers its builders never could have imagined. The first and most immediate threat is human. Looters, armed with coordinates from public research or their own sophisticated sonar, can descend on a site, ripping artifacts from their context to sell on the black market. This is not simply theft, it is the erasure of history, as a statue removed from a temple wall loses its story, its connection to the community that placed it there. Another industrial-scale danger comes from the sea itself, in the form of fishing trawlers. Their heavy nets, dragged across the seabed, can smash delicate walls, scatter artifacts across miles, and churn up the protective layers of sediment that have safeguarded wood and other organic materials for millennia. Even well-intentioned human contact poses a risk. Unregulated tourism, with divers touching statues or accidentally kicking up silt, can cause gradual but irreversible damage, while the simple act of anchoring a boat can crumble ancient masonry. Nature itself continues its work, with strong currents causing erosion, salt water corroding metals, and marine organisms slowly boring into stone. This complex web of threats demands an equally sophisticated response, one that balances the desire for knowledge with the imperative of preservation. A cornerstone of this effort is the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage. This international agreement, adopted in 2001, establishes a vital ethical framework. Its core principle is in situ preservation, meaning leaving cultural material on the seabed as the preferred first option. The reasoning is profound. An artifact's context, its position next to a wall, inside a home, or on a ship's deck, is often as informative as the object itself. Raising an item without meticulous, three-dimensional recording is like tearing a single page from a book and burning the rest. In situ preservation allows the site to remain a cohesive whole, a story waiting to be read in its proper order. Of course, there are times when recovery is necessary, such as when an artifact is under immediate threat from looters, construction, or severe environmental degradation. In these cases, the convention mandates that any intervention must follow the highest archaeological standards, ensuring full documentation and a plan for long-term conservation. This leads to the delicate science of caring for objects that have been underwater for centuries. A piece of waterlogged wood, if brought to the surface and allowed to dry quickly, will shrink, warp, and crack into splinters. Conservators must painstakingly replace the water in its cells with a stabilizing compound over months or even years, a slow, expensive, but essential process to save it for study and display. The ethical dilemma is constant. Do we bring a breathtaking artifact to a museum where millions can see it, knowing we remove it from its home and assume a permanent duty of care? Or do we leave it in the silent dark, intact within its story, accessible only to a few researchers and perhaps vulnerable to future harm? There is no single answer, only a series of careful, case-by-case judgments. Ultimately, protecting these underwater museums is a global endeavor that extends beyond treaties and laboratories. It requires fostering public awareness, helping coastal communities see these sites not as troves for treasure hunting, but as irreplaceable pages of their own heritage. It calls for international cooperation to patrol waters and share expertise. Each sunken city is a gift from the past, a message in a bottle that survived the storm of time. Our responsibility is to ensure that in our eagerness to open it, we do not tear the note to pieces. The true measure of our discovery will be what we choose to leave behind for the generations who will dive after us, equipped with tools and questions we cannot yet conceive. Our map of the deep is still mostly blank, a canvas waiting for its next revelation. While we have journeyed through 25 forgotten worlds, the ocean floor whispers of countless more, their stories sealed in silt and shadow. The quest does not end here, it simply points toward new horizons. So where might the next great discovery emerge? Some look to enduring legends like the fabled Atlantis. While its existence as described by Plato remains within the realm of profound myth, the very search for it has driven oceanographic exploration forward, teaching us that the pursuit of a story can lead to the uncovering of real, if different, truths. More tangible prospects lie in regions already proven to be graveyards of history. The anoxic depths of the Black Sea, which so perfectly preserved Phanagoria, almost certainly guard other lost settlements along its ancient shores, their wooden structures and everyday objects waiting in the dark. Similarly, the maritime Silk Road, a network of ancient trade routes connecting China to India, the Middle East, and Africa, must be lined with the remains of ports and way stations that succumb to storms or shifting coastlines. Each potential site is a locked door, and the keys to opening them are evolving. Artificial intelligence is now being trained to scan the mountains of sonar data collected by research vessels, searching for the subtle geometric patterns that human eyes might miss in a vast, monotonous seabed. These intelligent systems can process thousands of square miles of ocean floor imagery, flagging anomalies that warrant a closer look, turning a needle in a haystack search into a targeted investigation. Beyond the continental shelves, in the crushing darkness of the Hadal Zone, lie the deepest ocean trenches. These alien landscapes, once thought to be devoid of significant human history, may yet hold surprises. While unlikely to host traditional cities, they could be the final resting place of prehistoric landmasses that carried early human artifacts into the abyss during catastrophic geological events. Exploring these depths requires a new generation of resilient robotics and submersibles, expanding the very frontier of underwater archaeology. This forward gaze is not about replacing the past, but about continuing its conversation. Every undiscovered city is a missing puzzle piece in the grand narrative of human civilization. They represent communities, innovations, and connections we do not yet know we have lost. The ocean's greatest secret may not be a single golden metropolis, but the sheer scale of our own forgotten story, written in stone and resting in the quiet dark. For every ruin we have found, 100 more likely wait, ensuring that the call from the deep will beckon explorers and inspire wonder for generations to come. From the debated steppes of Yonaguni to the deliberate flooding of Shicheng, this journey reveals a profound truth. The ocean is not merely a grave for lost cities, it is Earth's greatest and most silent museum. Each site we have explored is a unique exhibit in this vast, aqueous archive, holding stories written not in ink, but in stone, silt, and memory. These are not random collections of rubble, they are organized records of human ambition. We see it in the grand customs checkpoint of Thonis-Heracleion, a testament to our drive for connection and commerce. We witness it in the persistent sea walls of Aperlae, a chronicle of our will to adapt and endure against an inevitable force. These cities archive our fragility just as powerfully. The slow retreat from Olous, the sudden submergence of Port Royal, the generations-long exodus from Doggerland, all speak to the delicate balance between human settlement and the planet's dynamic power. They teach us that the forces which shape continents, from tectonic size to climatic shifts, are the true authors of much of our history, often writing their final chapters in water. This exploration also confirms a beautiful and humbling idea. Our oldest myths are frequently memories in disguise. The legendary pagodas of Mahabalipuram, the sunken capital of Dwarka, the cursed land of Saeftinghe. Each folktale emerged from a kernel of real, traumatic loss, a way for communities to make sense of the unimaginable and carry a warning forward through time. As our technology peels back the watery veil with sonar and robotics, we are doing more than recovering statues and pottery. We are recovering context. We are reassembling the full sentences and paragraphs of human experience that were abruptly erased. A mosaic on a Baiae floor tells us about leisure. A well in Atlit yam speaks to early community planning, and a submerged cairn in an Irish lake whispers of sacred landscapes transformed. Each discovery reattaches a severed branch to the family tree of civilization, reminding us that our story is far more interconnected and far older than the traditional narratives on dry land suggest. So remember this, history is not confined to libraries or dusty dig sites on solid ground. A significant, poignant portion of it is curated in the cool, dark galleries of the deep, perfectly preserved by the very element that claimed it. These cities invite us to maintain a sense of wonder and humility, to keep looking and to keep listening. For every time we map a new stretch of seafloor or refine a sonar ping, we are answering a call that has echoed for millennia, a call from the deep, asking us not